on equal and logical sides to an argument. We have, unfortunately, millions of pieces of evidence for the Holocaust. It is an historical fact. And denying it is not some random opinion. Those who deny the Holocaust aim to encourage another one. Fifth, when discussing the difficulty of removing content, Mark Zuckerberg asked, where do you draw the line? Yes, drawing the line can be difficult. But here's what he's really saying. Removing more of these lies and conspiracies is just too expensive. The truth is, these companies won't fundamentally change because their entire business model relies on generating more engagement, and nothing generates more engagement than lies, fear, and outrage. Finally, Zuckerberg said that social media companies should live up to their responsibilities, but he's totally silent about what should happen when they don't. By now, it's pretty clear they cannot be trusted to regulate themselves. As with the Industrial Revolution, it's time for regulation and legislation to curb the greed of these high-tech robber barons. In his speech, Zuckerberg said that one of his main goals is to uphold as wide a definition of freedom of expression as possible. It sounds good. Yet our freedoms are not only an end in themselves, they're also the means to another end. As you say here in the US, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But today, these rights are threatened by hate, conspiracies, and lies. The ultimate aim of society should be to make sure that people are not targeted, not harassed, and not murdered because of who they are, where they come from, who they love, or how they pray. If we make that our aim, if we prioritize truth over lies, tolerance over prejudice, empathy over indifference, and experts over ignoramuses, then maybe, just maybe, we can stop the greatest propaganda machine in history. We can save democracy. We can still have a place for free speech and free expression. And most importantly, my jokes will still work. Thank you very much.
For those who are not familiar, he is Sacha Baron Cohen. Yeah? He's actually a comedian. Yeah, and he's actually in his speech criticizing the social media giants. Yeah, the big five or the big six. Yeah, he asked in his speech. This is the shorter version. Yeah, and the longer one. He asked, if you, for instance, bought a car and the car got an accident or it's exploded, you could ask the car company to fix it. But Facebook, it has created, it has made someone like Donald Trump to win the election. But we cannot hold Facebook into account. So there's an entity that goes beyond the law of the United States. That's his critic. And I think this is relevant with what we will hear together today. From Dr. Dodi Ambardi about the digital tyranny, yeah? And Pak Gulam will lead the session for the next 1.5 hours. Pak Gulam, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Pak Wija. Yeah, we just like Jude, yeah, in this kind of summer course. Good afternoon, participant, and welcome to the day third of our summer course. And as warming up by Pak Wija with information of Facebook, today we'd like to hear a different kind of perspective regarding information, digital information. Who has the power among those kind of information, whether government still have it or any kind of actor. As we discussed it yesterday, that so many actors have an interest about information. So to make it clear, let us sorry. Yes. Our guest speaker today is Pak Kusrido Ambardi, PhD. We can call it Pak Dodi, right?
Yeah.
Yes, Pak Dodi from Gadjah Mada University. I think we are in Indonesia is very familiar with Pak Dodi since his writing and books range from communication to the election political parties. And one that I found is about the uncover cartel politics. That's very important for politics as today. So we'd like to hear Pak Dodi share about digital Leviathan. And please, during the session, you can ask question using chat room, and at that time, if you have opportunity, you can directly ask to the Pak Dodi. So from now, Pak Dodi, please, the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure whether all of us are at the same time zone, but to anyone, good afternoon, and thank you for having me in this forum. So how long the time that I have for presentation, Pak Gulam?
For presentation, 20 to 30 minutes, and the rest will be a discussion with the participant.
Can I use share screen?
Yes, I already make you as a co-host. Yeah.
I have like 15 to 16 slides, but of course, I can make it short if needed. Because slides can, give me a guidance so that my presentation is more systematic. And in addition to that, if you are bored with my presentation in the slides, you can see some cartoon or some pictures that might interest you. So it's just another way of saying that if I'm boring, and then I can speed up my presentation, and then we can start discussions. Okay, I will share my my slides. Wait a minute. Okay. So my title, Digital Leviathan, I intentionally made it, at least in my opinion, is more interesting because I used to be a journalist. So how to make an essay interesting? Start with interesting title, but the content, and then you decide whether it is interesting or not. So it is about digital Leviathan. It is related to what the French comedian said when he was talking about Facebook. That Facebook actually defines our democracy. Facebook defines what we can express, our ideas, our opinion. That Facebook can limit the type of expressions that it can go and it can go not in its platform. But I want to widen the horizon. But I guess you are all familiar with what is called GAFAM here. Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft. These are all big technology companies. And then even some journalists like Farhad Manjoo, I guess he is a New York Times journalist. He wrote a book and called this big five as the frightening five because of its power. So when we are talking about a democracy or a government or and other democracy, e-government, etc., actually we are talking about this power. When we are talking about democracy, we need to critically ask a questions how the power is distributed. So my presentation is about that. This is like a formal something that is academician usually do, starting with definition. I guess you are familiar with Leviathan as a term. It is, I guess it was popularized by Thomas Hobbes when he wrote a book 300 years ago, more than 300, oh no, 400 years ago, Leviathan in 1651, when he tries to justify the presence of absolute power of state. And people should obey that state, that Leviathan, that sovereign, in exchange for peace and security. Of course, Thomas Hobbes assumes that everyday life is anarchy. So we need someone that that is able to establish order, and then that's the state. So with that reasoning, and then he argues that absolute power belongs to state is a necessary one. But then, since Leviathan as a term, since then was used by have been used by many other scientists, because I'm from political science. I took a PhD degree in political science. Then these all examples are from political science. So for example, Cox and McCubbins, using the title of the book, Legislative Leviathan, is written in 2009, 2007. That's the second edition. The first edition was in '93. So it is about the organization in United States Congress, where the organizations, the elite, the establishment actually dominates the political space in Congress. So it's like Leviathan. They are dominating. So, and then Grismala Buse in 2000, I do not really remember the title of the book. I guess Building Leviathan. She tries to explain the phenomenon of Leviathan in Eastern European democratizing countries, where the old establishments try to recapture the state, etc., etc. And then in this presentation, I use Leviathan, digital Leviathan, refers to big technology company, consists of Government, Google or Alphabet, and then Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft. And individually or collectively, these big five have been dominating global digital landscape. And then when we are talking about democracy, whether it is at the global level or at the national level or domestic level, we need to know how these companies actually, to a large extent, determine the kind of democracy that we have. And then, the other day when LPTKIS, it was Pak Wija asked me to contribute an essay, a writing, and then it was about e-government. And then partly I agree with e-government, but then I criticize because discussion about e-government actually is too technical. Of course, this is a field that a lot of political scientists or communication scientists talk about the e-government index, for example, how to achieve e-government, how to digitize our democracy at every level, at the voter levels, at the management level, at government level, etc., using digital platform. But it forgets something. That is how power actually is distributed, and politics and democracy actually is about power. So when we are talking about a democracy, and then we need to talk about the digital platform, the big companies, and then they are the actors, maybe the most important actors, as we live now in the digital era. So just to give you an idea, their wealth. Of course, wealth is one of the sources of power. So these five big tech companies, their wealth combined in 2020, it is worth $7.5 trillion. So it is bigger than Japanese GDP in the same year, which is 5.1. Just to give you an idea for Indonesian colleagues, Indonesian GDP at the same year was merely $1.1 trillion. So we are smaller than this four. these five big tech companies. So some even argues that the digital Leviathan, the big five, those big tech companies have become more and more like a state, and they are known as net states. Net state is not a standard, it's not standard term yet in political science. But more people, especially journalists, use this to show that these big five big tech companies actually behave like states. And then no countries can escape from this big five companies' reach, digital reach. And then that's why we need to pay attention when we are talking about democracy and when we are talking about activism to enhance democracy, to develop democracy, to push the democracy develop in our country. And then we need to pay attention to the power of this technological company. And then there's also personal reason why I focus on my attention to these five companies. I've done some researches on digital regulation in Indonesia, and then on fake news. And then, after doing all those research, at the end, I started to realize that no, if we do not pay attention to the companies, actually we just see or we just read a half of a story. So that's why we need to take care of their power. So this is my framework. I follow the tradition developed by C. Wright Mills, and then William Domhoff, and then Thomas Day. All these authors actually have curiosity and always ask questions about how power is distributed. And power in democracy is not evenly distributed. Even though the people have the rights to vote, but actually in the decision-making process, in the policy-making process, some groups, the elites, and then Wright Mills say, label it the corporate rich, whose own disproportionately wealth actually have the ability to screw the political process. And then, of course, the term, the corporate rich, we can use this and replace it with the big five, the digital companies. And then even in many policy-making process, all these corporates actually, have proved to be more powerful than labor organizations, and then liberal groups, and then environmental activists, and then all the rest of us, of course. So, and then digital Leviathan. So, what do they do? And then why they are so important? And then how they determine our democratic life? Like the comedian, I do not remember the name of the French comedian in the video that we just previously watched, but he said about the freedom of expressions as defined by Facebook. And then he does not trust Facebook. He does not trust that Facebook and other companies, by implication, can self-regulate themselves so that for the sake of public interest, and then Facebook, Google, etc., would give up their privilege to define democracy. So the freedom of expressions, and then the definition of it, and then what is proper and what is improper to be uploaded in their platforms is labeled community standards in Facebook. And then community guidelines in Periscope, Twitter, YouTube, Google, Snapchat. And then these are the rules that the big tech companies can drop, can ban anyone, any party that does not follow their guidelines. And then who make the rules? Of course, the companies themselves who made the rules. And then, just an illustration, maybe some of you knows this case. If you know Maditoni. Maditoni is one of the Indonesian scholars. Now he is working in Singapore, I don't know, or in Jakarta. And then he was critical towards the government and towards all actors that that betray the public trust. But then, one day, Facebook banned and his Facebook account, with no clear reasons. While all of his friends, his colleagues, was wondering what is dangerous to community about his writings in Facebook, because we like his writings, but he was banned nevertheless. And then, of course, a petition was sent to Facebook in Indonesia, and then he has been allowed again to use Facebook platform. But the thing is that my point is that it is Facebook standard who can let people use the platform and then ban them from their platforms. No discussion.
Pak Dodi, this is Lima de Supriyatna, right?
Yeah, Imati Supriyatna.
Because you mentioned Maditoni, yeah? That's his popular name, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess his complete name is Maditoni Supriyatna.
Oh, but in Facebook he hide the Tony one.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to sound modern, I guess, right?
Yeah, because when he was in college, his friends called him Maditoni. Maditoni.
Yeah.
But in Facebook he used Mati Supriyatma. But there is Tony, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess it was from Antonius. I do not know.
Yeah, I just want to make sure because I also a big fan of his critics. Yeah, it makes me laugh. Yeah.
And then, so we need to know then what are the sources of the net states? Actually, these three sources of power belongs to these 5 companies, technological. Sometimes we do not know much about technology. We do not know much about algorithm. We do not know much about how they use the big data that they collect every day from all over the world. But the technology, of course, that makes them possible to steer the political process at any levels. And then, of course, like I previously mentioned, they are very wealthy. They are rich, extremely rich. So that's the economic power. So, for example, if you want to sue Google, your country, for example, not as an individual, want to sue Google or Facebook for privacy violation, for example. But then they have money to pay to hire a very professional defenders, lawyers. Well, we do not have the same economic pocket, deep pocket like them. So usually when in the court, of course, they have higher leverage than us. And then, of course, we are going to talk about the political power that they have too. So we'll move a bit faster in here. So this is another case, the case of Trump political triumph. Time once made a cover story about Trump, and the title is "Liar in Chief." And then, there is something special in this ex-United States president. He was known as likes to spread disinformation, misinformation, and then I guess it was the Washington Post who count his lies that reached more than 10,000 lies, etc. But still, he is very popular. He has 70 voters behind him, even though he lost the election in 2020 to Biden. But his followers are very loyal to him, despite his lies. But then, in January the 6th, I guess you remember when, now it is called insurrections, when the Trump followers stormed the Congress, and then it was called insurrections. And then since then, Twitter and Facebook banned Trump. But the thing is that, for more than 5 years and 4 years of his presidency, actually they gave those digital companies gave their platforms and let Trump to use their platforms to spread lies. It is just like, the point that was mentioned by the French comedian. I like him because he was so sharp. But he was not joking, I guess, in his speech, in the video that we previously watched. So these are the big tech companies that can easily let people, for whatever reasons, to use their platform to mobilize hate, to spread lies, etc. And then we are asked to trust them. And then also, they ask us to let them work, and then they would be responsible, they promise. But of course, a lot of events, a lot of problems have been created by those tech companies. But now I just want to I want to be more a bit specifics. So when we are dealing with those 5 big tech companies, actually we need to divide. We need to pay particular context in the global north, and we are talking about European countries, and then we are talking about Northern America, which are Canada and United States. Actually, the tensions between the old Leviathans, those nation states, those governments, and these big tech companies actually have been there for a while. So they clash on the issue of data protection, advertising monopoly that has killed quality journalism. They also clashed on the issue of copyright of news, etc., etc. Even some of them, a group of politicians in Washington, and then a group of activists or politicians in Europe, they proposing a proposal that these big tech companies need to be broken up into several smaller companies. Just like if you remember in 19th centuries, Bell, I do not Bell system. It was like telecommunication company which monopolized the telecom business in the United States, and then it was broken down. It was broken up into 5 smaller groups to avoid to prevent monopoly. And now the idea of breaking up of those tech giants is being proposed in several countries. And then this old Leviathan, the nation states, are also able to force fines to violations committed by these tech companies, and then they are able, and to some extent they are successful to pursue what do you call it, to apply tax to them, because they make a lot of profits, and then sometimes they simply to avoid taxation in particular countries. So they build I do not remember the English word for this, but in Indonesia I call it perusahaan cangkang. How do you say it in English? So it's like, small companies in Bahamas, and then they just simply move their wealth to the companies so that they can avoid tax in Europe. So, but my point in here is that the old Leviathan, the nation states, actually have to some extent leverage to negotiate with these big companies. But now, what about the global south? So like Southeast Asian countries, including Indonesia, do they also have the power to negotiate with all these big tech companies? as in countries in the global north are able to do, I guess the situation is a bit different. So these are the example. This is Indonesian example actually. So we once heard that Indonesian government would use open source for creating Indonesian digital platform for the government. And then also universities like UGM, Kacamata, where I teach, also tries to use to develop open source using Linux to make their own digital platform. But then, you know, for unspecific reasons, even though if we try to, you know, to do some explorations, some research in virtually, and then we know that it is actually is about the power of the big tech companies, whether it was Microsoft or Google, that they do not want to be to lose the opportunities to dominate the Indonesian digital landscape. So the idea of using open source for creating digital platform for Indonesian bureaucracy, for Indonesian university, etc., actually at that time was simply dead because of this. They failed to negotiate with the big tech companies. And then if you like, you know, just simply browse the internet, and then the keyword was the data storage, Google data storage, whether it should be placed in Indonesia or in Singapore or in other countries in Southeast Asia at that time, because, you know, looking at the huge or the enormous number of internet users in Indonesia, even though the percentage is not as high as Singapore, but the number is enormous. So Indonesian government at that time would argue that because, you know, Google actually have a lot of profits, make a lot of profits in Indonesia. So they should place the data storage or server at that time in Indonesia, physically, the physical storage. And then Facebook, I do not remember, but one of those big tech companies were asked to open the headquarters in Jakarta, but they refused, and then they chose Singapore. So meaning that and then the issue of fake news, of course. My point in here is that, you know, the global south, but actually, particularly the case of Indonesia, the government actually does not have a high leverage against those big tech companies. Not like the ones in Europe or in North America. So this is Indonesian case. Of course, fake news is always a problem. Even in America, there is a problem of fake news in there. Even though then Trump manipulate the use of fake news by accusing New York Times and then CNN, Washington Post are fake news. And the cartoon is interesting because, you know, reality or alternative facts, alternative reality now has become keywords in American politics, especially those who are loyal to Trump. And then, you know, just to show you my point, the alternative reality, and then how the big tech companies actually contributes to the you know, emerging patterns of alternate reality in Indonesia. So in 2017, and I should have regularly do this research so that I know the trend. But it was research in 2017. So with one of the digital company in Indonesia, consists of engineers from ITB, Institut Teknologi Bandung, and UNER. I work with them and then ask them to grab news from 3,000 online news media and Twitter too, using their machine. So with that, I wanted to portray the sentiment, to map the sentiment embedded in the news and information. And then my research was from July to September 2017. And then I used that, the negative and positive sentiments, and I compared that with the survey data. At that time, I was in LSI, one of the Indonesian Public Opinion Survey, Lembaga Survey Indonesia or Indonesian Survey Institute. At that time, I was the executive director. So I just want to make comparison between these two. And then these are the results. So at that time, in Indonesia, it is known as kriminalisasi ulama, or in English version, the issue was on ulama's criminalization. So all those 3,000 new online news, these are the results. So the blue color represents the proportions of positive, positive sentiment toward the government. And then the red one, negative sentiment to the government. And then the gray one is neutral. So on the left are the distribution of sentiments in 3,000 news outlets in Indonesia. So you can see legacy media is like, the printed media, the big ones like Kompas and then Tempo, etc., who were dominating the media business in Indonesia, printed media at that time. It's called legacy media. I put them on the same group in here. And then Muslim media. Muslim in here should be put in quote unquote, because I do not really know whether they represent Muslims or they just simply, pretend to be a Muslim media or Islamic media, but actually they just simply use that sentiment, religious sentiment to reap profit. So Muslim media in that case should be put in quote unquote apostrophe. So the distribution, and then in social media, Twitter, all this digital media, the majority, the proportion of negative sentiments toward the government on the issue of ulama criminalisasi ulama or ulama's criminalizations were huge, or the majority. But then I have the survey data. It is simply the opposite. The picture is just simply the opposite. From time to time, and I even try to see other findings from other survey institutions in Indonesia, that at that time in 2017, actually the sentiment toward the government, the leadership, president's leadership, actually were mostly positive. So we have two different pictures. In the digital world, the government was simply bad and was simply should be blamed for criminalizing ulamas. But then the public, the survey data actually drawn from representative sample across Indonesia, and then the majority, 7 out of 10 of Indonesians think that, the government actually do the right thing. So we have to contrast. And then here, on regulating mass organization. So I guess at that time, the government banned HTI, Hizbut Tahrir Indonesia. This is not a place to debate whether that policy is correct or is wrong or correct. But the sentiment, we also have the same contrast in here. Digital media tends to be negative toward the government, but then the people, as recorded by survey data, the majority of them actually had a positive sentiments toward the government. And the last issue on foreign debt, Indonesian government until now has been blamed for the increasing amount of foreign debt, Indonesian foreign debt, the government debt. And then on the issue, the positive and the negative sentiments also on digital media, the sentiment are very negative. And then in survey data, the majority of them had positive sentiments over the government. So here, on the digital world, on the left, the legacy media, Muslim media, social media, actually they have had their own dynamics. They have had their own reality that is different from the reality as faced by real public. So in this case, in these three issues, now we can see that actually this digital platform, whether they fit up or they give like arenas or stages for all those political actors that can give public disinformations, actually part of them is the responsibility of the big tech companies. So this is an illustration. And this actually, I get this from the internet. Actually, this is promotional poster actually from this big five, because they try to collect donations for social purposes from Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft. But you know what is under those two companies' name? Google filters your thought. Apple knows where your mom's is, etc., etc. Actually, this gives us an idea, a very basic idea that they actually is dominating us, especially in terms of the information that we receive that can shape our perceptions about the reality. Now, my concluding remarks. When we are talking about digital democracy at the global, at the comparative level, at the global level, or at the domestic level, we need to go beyond technical issues which dominate the discussion of the government. So for a while, we should pay attention to the power, the distribution of power, and the power that belongs to the big tech companies, because these are the companies that actually shape our perception of reality. And then, of course, we need to critically explore the issue of power distribution, especially whether the power distribution is different from those countries in global north and the northern hemisphere with the southern hemisphere, like Indonesia, where Indonesia is located. And then at the domestic level, the government needs to develop a policy proven through which it can negotiate with the digital Leviathan, not simply promoting digital platform for a government, but we need to be critical what kind of power that they have, and then and with that power, how they can shape our perception of reality, how they can animate the dynamics of democracy in Indonesia, including it lacks fake news, it lacks disinformation spread all over Indonesian digital arena. Okay, I will stop here with these concluding remarks, and then maybe we can discuss some issues that you are interested in. Thank you, Mas Gulam.
Thank you, Mas Dodi or Pak Dodi. Very clear and insightful presentation, and we realize that GAFAM big tech company is really powerful, mostly in the developing countries like in Indonesia, that sometimes they also hampering government regulation. And moreover, in the political aspect, they become a significant player in dominating public discourse. We already have a question in chat room, and maybe Mas Tommy would like to ask directly to Pak Dodi. Hello, Pak Tommy. Okay. Yeah, I will. This is about how we empower ourselves as a civil society. As we know that multinational corporation, the term chosen by Pak Tommy is have a high power and influence many kind of country, and it is already studied long ago in development economic studies. And also in the domestic, we have government, which is have a system of regulation. However, this kind of regulation sometimes is powerless in dealing with the MNC company or digital Leviathan. And we as a civil society also, we don't have a quite a control of power toward government and also towards the MNCs. How we try to empower ourselves as a civil society.
Okay, I'll try. This is a hard questions because
Yeah.
if we have a ready strategy, a ready-made strategy, and then we can of course we can use it. But let me give you one example. Actually, this is actually it's not encouraging, but it's more discouraging. The other day, when I was researching digital regulation in Indonesia, including the protection of privacy data, and then I interviewed some of the officials in Jakarta in Kominfo, and then they said that we try to follow the guidelines from Europe, which is known as GDPR, General Data Protection Right. That's our model. Of course, that's a good one. But the thing is that until now, the government hasn't made it official. What is the fashion of the law? And then, of course, with that, it shows that why the government is so hesitant, why it does not speed up that law. Because everywhere now, the governments everywhere are talking about how to protect privacy, especially private data belongs to their citizens that is used sometimes abusively by the tech companies. So it tells us one thing that that's the determination of Indonesian government actually is not that high. That's for one thing. And then maybe the second one, so I guess you remember I do not remember the company that used Facebook data that used by Trump for predicting the behavior of voters in America, but
Cambridge Analytica.
Cambridge Analytica. At that time, a sizable Indonesians actually, their data actually also were grabbed by the company. It became a controversy in Indonesia, but then it just simply vanished, the issue. So meaning that the Indonesian government did not pursue how to deal with that kind of situations. So meaning that it was weak. We of course try to make the government position stronger by of course collaborating how to make this issue become a public issue and popularize this issue, including this forum. So how we deal with all those kind of powerful big tech companies, which cannot be totally controlled by the government, and then we push there, and then we make collaboration across countries, because if we just simply mobilize our movement in our country with small group of people, I guess it's not enough. But if we try to collaborate, that's what Mas Vija said in the beginning. So organizing movement across countries with the same concerns, actually that's one way of dealing with this kind of issue. So Mas Tommy, maybe I'm not able to give you like a ready-made answer. The policy should be this and this and this. But we try to explore how do we deal with this kind of situation. And then do we need to prioritize particular issues than others, like privacy, data is more important than other issues. Things like that we need to discuss. So my answer actually is like, just open another question, I guess. Back to you,
Yeah.
Pak.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Tommy. You may continue with follow-up question if we need to expand this discussion. We also have different kind of question from Pratipa Perasiti. Pratipa, you'd like to say? Please.
Okay. Thank you, Pak Gulam. Beforehand, thank you, Pak Dodi, for the fascinating presentation. It's really close to my research interest in technopolitics. I have a question about what do you think? In your opinion, what do you think about Southeast Asia own Leviathan? For example, Gojek or Grab that has extended their grip across Southeast Asia and has seemingly provoked an alternative mobilization during this era of gig economy. What do you think about their impact? And in the context of Southeast Asia, is Leviathan a productive analytical concept to understand our own technopolitical landscape? Because we have different history of absolutism and technopolitical configuration. Meanwhile, Leviathan is embedded in Western historicity with different history of domination and sovereignty. Is there an alternative concept to understand our technopolitical regime in Southeast Asia? Perhaps that's all. Thank you, Pak Dodi.
Okay, thank you, Mas Pratipa. That's a good provocation because when I was talking about the digital Leviathan, I limit my Leviathan at the global level. The big ones, the 5 that have been a concern for many countries. How to deal with them, and then how to control them, and then how to prevent them from monopolizing the digital business and digital landscape and other digital enterprises. And then now we are talking, is there any other Leviathan like Gojek that recently collaborate with Tokopedia? So I guess it is official, right? Go to. But maybe we need to distinguish. I guess like digital Leviathan that I was talking about, that I'm talking about at the global level, they dominate the infrastructure, telecommunication, and then digital platform. While like Gojek and Tokopedia, they make their own platform above their platform. So of course, each of them can be dangerous in the sense that they can dominate and they can monopolize particular sector of public business of business. So we need maybe to pay attention to different types or level of Leviathan. At the global level, this is important, and then at the regional level, like Gojek, etc. We need to deal with them too, because when Gojek and Tokopedia merge, and then they have more power. But the thing is that Gojek is not the only ride-hailing business. There are Grabs, Maxim, and then Uber or Uber. Uber. I do not know because that sounds like German. Actually, they also so there are some competitions, and so it is different from the situation is a bit different from the big 5 that I was previously mentioned, which is Google and then Facebook Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft. Even, so the level of danger actually is different. Of course, once go to the merger of Gojek and Tokopedia become local or regional Leviathan, we need also to pay attention to them too. But now, of course, we can limit our attention to the big ones or the middle level one. So technological wise, when we use Samsung and then we use Apple smartphone, etc. Actually, Tokopedia and Gojek depends on the technological platform made available by those giants. So Android, Samsung use Android. Apple, it has its own iOS. But both of them, can easily, if they want, can easily drop your app from the application store. So that means the power belongs to the global Leviathan and the regional Leviathan are different. But of course, when we talk about the monopoly, when we talk about how these companies, the Leviathan at the global level or the Leviathan at the regional level, both have the potential danger that can, harm public interest. That's my response to Mas Pradipa. So, of course, you can focus on, especially when you do a research, you need to limit your scope of research. Local or regional Leviathan maybe is more important and more to be watched than the big one. But of course, our discussion, of course, opens up two paths of research at the Leviathan at the global level and Leviathan at the local level. Thank you. Back to you, Mas Gulam.
Okay. Mas Pradipa, you'd like to extend your discussion with Pak Dodi, or
May I ask one more question?
Yeah, it's okay. Please.
In response to Pak Dodi's response, do you think will South Asia reach that level of infrastructural independence? That is when Southeast Asia have their own infrastructure, and will our own technological nationalism, like AI projects and other ambitious technological projects, will instead bring more danger to our technopolitical current regime, like you have described before? What do you think about it, Pak Dodi? Is our technopolitical project is dangerous in the future? Thank you. That's all.
Not necessarily dangerous, but when we are talking about technopolitics, we need to distinguish between the pipelines. Traditionally, it was called telecommunication. We are talking about fiber optic infrastructure and then satellite, etc. And then we talk about the platforms. Google, especially, are in both sectors. For example, when everywhere he is trying to promote Google balloons for connecting, for giving like internet service in geographically difficult areas instead of building fiber optic cable, and then they offer Google balloons. But when it was offered in Indonesia, actually in Indonesia, the fiber optics rollout was started long time ago, and we know about if we remember about the palaparings, that's the infrastructure that includes satellite and fiber optics. And then Google, if the government allowed Google to build the Google balloon infrastructure, and then it will clash with the interest of telecommunication company in Indonesia. So, in that case, whether it is good or bad, if there is competition, or it is good or bad if we have one standard. This is still open to debate, but then it is more beneficial for the government or for the public. Maybe Indonesia, for all those who live in Eastern Indonesia, where telecommunication infrastructure is not as good as Western Indonesia, Google balloon would be the solution for them. But at the same time, and then it gives up like a room for Google to dominate there. We do not know what next to come when Google once have a balloon infrastructure for internet in Eastern Indonesia. So for now, I would say that I tend to be critical toward the big ones because they have everything, and then we need to democratize the business of platform in the world, and especially in Southeast Asia, and more specifically in Indonesia. That's my response. It was from Pak Pradipa atau Mas Edi?
Still Pak Pradipa. It is a follow-up question. Okay, thank you, Mas Pradipa. We move to Mas Taufan, who would like to assess the opportunity of elite in Indonesia to promote digital democracy. Mas Taufan, you like to say?
Yeah, thank you very much for Mas Gulam, and thank you very much for your inspiring speech, Mr. Dodi Ambardi. And actually, I really enjoy your presentation, and then I know that you write very seriously article about Indonesian politics, especially about what you call the politics of cartel, right? And then you try to base your argument on some scholars in America, and so actually before coming to this summer course, I had suffered from Messiah complex. So I come to with one mission to answer the big question in my mind as LP3S just discover just release its finding about the setback of the democratic setback in Indonesia because of elite, or let's say oligarchy, elite, or let's say cartel party, whatever. And then I really want to question what is the problem of Indonesia. And then despite we are talking about digital Leviathan today, and then I think your argument seems to me based on Susana Zuboff's perspective on surveillance democracy, in which corporates reach, we cannot control corporate reach. And then I think even we want to promote democratic digital media, but in some extent we cannot challenge their corporate reach because they have money. It seems like we cannot challenge the corporate of Pakistan today, because of course it's about health, but it's about money. So I mean, I have question in chat box. I want to ask you, how come state and Indonesian elite could challenge could promote democratic digital digital era, digital media, let's say, and then how far our country, our government, our elite could promote democracy in Indonesia. Because I think our elite is not stupid. They are powerful. They know the situations. Mostly come from the best university, ex-activists. They know the situation. What's the situation? Are they really stupid to change, to make institutional rational choice to promote democracy, or they cannot challenge the capital, the political capital? They cannot challenge the right now situation. So what's really happened, Prof. Louis Ambardi? This is my side complex. I suffer from this question. This big question in the summer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Van. Yeah, it's very challenging question to us. Yeah, whether we are consolidated as elite or we just try to put aside this challenge. So, Pak Dodi, please, your response.
Okay, I will respond to Pak Mas Tovan comments and at two different levels. The first one is when we are talking about the structure of Indonesian politics, and we are not talking about the indicators of the democratic regression or democratic backsliding. We will talk about that later. Actually, the Indonesian political structure actually has not changed much since I did my research on Indonesian cartel, multi-cartelized party system in Indonesia. So the actors at the party level are the same. And then when we are talking about those who are powerful economically, and then if we borrow the term of John Wright Mills, the corporate rich, actually in Indonesia we are talking about oligarchy, right? Para oligarka. That's actually the corporate rich. So these are similar, but we simply use different terms. So they are still there, and then they are still dominating the economic landscape. And then in that situation, I would say that all those political actors, especially in the party levels, political parties, they actually work together with those corporate rich. Now the question is, if they and then it hasn't changed to me, and then democratic backsliding, it is aimed, critics aimed at Jokowi. Actually, some of them actually partly true. But if we discuss that kind of indicators of Indonesian democratic regressions, actually we can easily agree. But if, let's say, if Jokowi did did not ban HTI, did not employ buzzers, etc., as accused by his opposition politicians, actually, is Indonesia would have gotten better democratically? I don't think so. The political structure is still the same to me. And then even now, when we are talking about the digital companies, and then the digital factor in Indonesian politics, all those powerful actors actually also have staged digital campaigns, either for their corporation or either for themselves as a person, etc. And then they even employ particular group of influencers to criticize the government. We are sometimes shaped by the perceptions that buzzer RP, for those who are not Indonesians, buzzer RP is a label for government paid influencers. It is always, or in media especially, buzzer RP belongs to the government. But actually, if you meet all those politicians, they also have digital troops. In that case, actually, what we think about the digital empowerment actually can be manipulated by all actors. In this case, I would argue that Jokowi is catheter. How do you say it in English? Catheter. I don't know the English word for this. So it's like,
left behind.
Yeah, maybe Jokowi was left behind. So he is often, he has been accused of paying influencers. But actually, all political actors do that. But the public perceptions, it is the government only. So, I met with all those political players, politicians. Actually, they also think about how to build their own media, online media, and then they have a digital team that spread the link of the media, and the news on that media actually is positive news about him or about her, etc., etc. So almost every politician actually does that in Indonesia. So in that case, we need to be critical to all those actors, not only Jokowi. Jokowi, of course, is one of the executive. Our president needs to be criticized when he makes a wrong decision and then makes the democracy regress in Indonesia. But he is not the only one, not the only actor. And then another thing, one of the PhD students, he just graduated from UI, and then I happened to become one of his co-promoters. And then she researched about native ads, and then how politicians, not politicians, how media actually use native ads as source of income. Because now the conventional ads actually does not give them a lot of profits anymore. And then who use native ads? Advertising that pretends to be news in the media. Those are politicians from all spectrums of ideology, not only the government. And there's another evidence that we need to be very, very critical and very careful when we are talking about buzzer RP, when we are talking about digital campaign, democratic regressions, etc. We need to be more nuanced in discussing all those issues. That's my response.
Perhaps you could elaborate further about what do you mean by native ad, because I'm not familiar with it.
Oh, okay. Native ads, now if we are talking about the conventional ads, it's like banner, like display, and then advertorial, etc. And then, what is iklan baris in English, Mas Wija?
What is it?
Iklan baris.
Iklan kecil ya. Very, very tiny advertisement, perhaps.
Those are conventional, and then people tend not to believe the information, in those ads.
Yeah.
And then once they know that it is an advertisement, consumers usually are critical, but they trust news. They trust media that produce news. They are most trustful. And then now, as marketers, how can I make my product credible without showing that actually it is an ad? So native ad actually add looks like news.
Or it's like
Yeah.
fake advertisement, yeah.
Fake advertisement, but people would not know because
Yeah, yeah.
some
That is fake. Okay.
that's what we call native ad.
What is
So
the Indonesian term for that, Pak Dodi?
belum ada, not
Oh,
yet.
not yet. Yeah. Okay. Belum ada.
Belum ada. Yes, all those practitioners in the media, they still call iklan natif.
Okay.
Not native. Okay.
Okay.
Native ad.
Okay, Mas
I think
Dodi.
the more suitable title would be naughty ad, yeah, not native ad.
No.
Yeah, Mas Dodi, we have also a question from our colleagues at Universitas Jember, Pak Abu Bakar Ebihara, about the future of Indonesia democracy and the benefit of the government from the social media. Pak Abu Bakar, you may directly ask Pak Dodi, right?
Halo Mas Ebi.
Halo Mas Dodi.
Yes.
Thank you Pak Gulam for the time. And I think yeah, it's very interesting. And the title particularly is inspiring, digital Leviathan, I think. And part of my question has been answered previously by Mas Dodi when you talk about the use of social media by the government. But in addition to that, I would like to know who will get benefit more with this availability of social media platform like this. I mean, so and traditionally we have a contestation in outside the social media. And we saw that the government propaganda machine has been very strong. And now with this social media, then the government has more propaganda machine, I think. Yeah. So to what extent, I think this increase the so-called our decreasing democracy, as we have been discussed yesterday. I think we talked a lot about the quality of Indonesian democracy is getting worse. So maybe you can elaborate more in this social media, how government has utilized social media as the propaganda machines to reduce our quality of democracy. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mas Ebi. It is easier for me to say that, actually it is easier to answer who loses than who get benefits. The public loses. Because, even though the government try to persuade, actually the government, the rate of success of the government to influence the public actually is very low. Because my research, as I already showed you in my presentation, actually the media, the social media, it is the oppositions. Those who are critical towards the government, who dominates the digital landscape. So not the government. And then at the same time, I would think that it is maybe less harmful, the social media, if we have two things. The first one is we have the strong traditional, strong quality journalism in Indonesia, which is now one by one simply decreasing. The quality is decreasing. The Indonesian quality journalism is on decrease. So what I have in my mind is that if we have like New York Times in Indonesia, if we have the Washington Post version in Indonesia, and then it is from time to time they can stand on their own financial roots, and then they can also still maintain good journalism, good quality journalism, and then people would have comparison, would have benchmark. Actually, which versions of news that is correct, that they can refer to good journalism. But now all those media, credible media in the past, now they are pressed, they are forced to make ends meet, if using istilah keluarga itu the income is simply decreasing from time to time. So they have to find a new business model where they can no longer sell advertisement like before. Google and Facebook has taken away all those advertisement from those media. So they have to find ways how to still economically be able to do news business in Indonesia. In that situation, I would say that, you know, the public actually are the losers. The government and the opposition, they can take they can get the benefits, but for not necessarily for the goodness of the public. I would say that. So just if we believe that the government has the strongest propaganda machine, I guess in the digital era, they are no longer the most powerful. As my slide shows, no. If we want to win campaigns in social media, sometimes we just need very small amount of capital, very small amount of money to mobilize, to do the campaigns in social media. And then if we skillful enough, we can make a viral message, which is the cost is very, very low, but people will talk about it. The government may have the deepest pocket, but it doesn't mean that they can win campaign or information warfare in the digital era and the social media. That's my answer to Mas Eddie. I hope that I do not know whether I already answered all your questions, Mas Eddie.
Yeah, we can continue later on, but we will move to the next question by Safina Maulida. Safina, you'd like to say? It is about what point that we can say a big tech corporation are turning into Leviathans beside their capitalism traits?
Actually, many. They have powers and they have become more powerful. They behave like states. Like, I guess maybe some of us know that Microsoft actually have an ambassador in United Nations, just like other states. Just for one. And then Google and then Amazon and Microsoft, they have all been involved in defense business. So they have those who develop drones, more precise drone, surveillance technology, etc. All these companies actually have the capability of doing that. So for example, if Google would use batch of drones in Jakarta, I guess they can easily monitor what happens in Indonesia, in Jakarta. So even Google Maps actually, we can know now that, we know this place, we know that place, and Google can collect all those data. And then and then we can track our own. Once we give our ID, our cell phone ID, and then we let them to access, they can trace us. They know how to profile us. So maybe I guess it's familiar for some of us. I guess when we click one particular news, and we are interested in particular issues, and then suddenly their sites would give us advertisement that might interest us, that is close with our interest.
Yeah, there's algorithm, yeah.
Our taste of things. So in that situation, and then they are actually is more powerful than states. Responding to Mbak Safina, I guess they are turning into Leviathans because they are so powerful, more powerful than states. Traditional Leviathan, in many situations. That's my answer to Mbak Safina. Back to you, Pak Gulam.
Thank you. We also have several questions. It's getting warmer, right? Even though actually we have to finish at 5, but when we look into the question, I think it's very, very challenging. From Yohanes Tianika Budiarsa, from the Sugio Pranoto Catholic University of Semarang. Johannes, you'd like to say directly to,
Thank
please.
you, Pak Gulam. Sorry for not using virtual background.
Okay.
And thank you for the time. So very interesting presentation, Pak Dodi. Thank you. And my question is, Pak Dodi concludes that the government needs to develop a policy blueprint through which it can negotiate with. So we know that several countries have enacted laws to regulate those tech companies, such as the European Union, Australia, Russia, China, Germany. So given the implementation of those regulations, in your opinion, Pak Dodi, which regulations that might be considered as a reference to our government in developing a policy blueprint to secure our public interest over the domination of a handful of global gatekeepers from Silicon Valley? Thank you.
Okay, to me, now we have 3 different references of policy blueprint that we can compare. The first one is America, United States, of course. You know, all those big 5s are American companies, actually. So they also have to deal with the issue of monopoly. And then now a certain group of congressmen in Washington, D.C. over there is try to, you know, to prevent them from monopolizing the business. And then, of course, this the business that they meant, they have to break them down. This engine is different from social media. So many lines of business, and they have to deal with that. That's one. Usually in America, they just simply more liberal. In America, whether we need, should we treat, that's one of the point of reference in dealing with the giant technology companies. That's one reference. The other is Europe. European companies, they usually are very critical against big tech, and then they have made a lot of legislation. And then the monumental one is the GDPR, the General Data Protection Right. Actually, Indonesian government, CQ, the Menkominfo, actually they are trying to learn, to study GDPR, to be adopted to Indonesia. To me, it is better because the public interest now in Europe are more protected through their legislations. And then the third one, of course, China. China simply shut out Google, Facebook, etc., and then they have their own digital platform. But the thing is that we are not as powerful as China, and then we do not want to be authoritarian state in Indonesia. That's for one thing. If we are talking about the policy blueprint, there are 3 references. Maybe, you know, maybe some other we can learn from. I don't know, Singapore or Japan, but at least the big models are those 3. And then now, second dimensions. If we have good, let's say, if we have good formulations of digital regulations to protect consumers, to protect citizens, to etc., can we enforce the punishment? That's the question. In Indonesia, for Indonesia, sometimes we not only on the digital related regulations, in other regulations, even the government sometimes does not have the power to enforce their own their own undang-undang, their own legislations. So we have to talk about good formulations of laws or regulations, and then the enforcement. Indonesia, and the second one is very weak.
Very clear. Thank you, Pak Dodi.
You're welcome.
Okay. Yeah. So we move. I will skip the question from Pak Wija later on. I will welcome Miss
Wah, ini gimana moderatornya?
Marilla Markaide. Later on, Pak Wija.
Siap.
Please, Miss Meryl Markaida. It is our colleagues from Philippines to Philippines. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Prof. Kulam. I'm aware that we're running out of time, so thank you for entertaining my question. So going back to Professor Ambardi, thank you for your presentation. It's actually my first time to hear the Leviathan being used to describe the big tech in the US. So for my question, you mentioned in your conclusion that we have to be critical of the power distribution of the digital Leviathan, which has greatly stemmed from the United States. What are your thoughts on the globalization of TikTok, the first major platform that's not from US? Specifically, what are its implications in terms of geopolitics between the United States and China? I'm aware that this might be beyond the scope, but it's worth a try to raise this question. So thank you, Pa.
Okay, so I will answer your questions from the point of view from Indonesia as developing countries that do not have platform technology. For us, maybe developing countries in Southeast Asia, it is better if there are competitions. If there is competitions among similar companies. So like TikTok is better. If we have TikTok and then YouTube and then other platforms that are similar to it. Why? Because, and then we can choose. If we do not want to deal with this harmful platform, and then we can choose another one. And then in that case, we can also make another one, our own digital platform. So in that case, competition is always good in that situation, especially from countries that is not as strong as China with good sumber daya manusia,
human resource. Yeah.
Human resource. But if there is a competition, there's a good. But TikTok. Is TikTok similar to YouTube? I do not. We need to be more specific in that. But my point is that competition is always good in the situation, because if there is only one player, then we depend totally on that player. So that's my response to you, Miss Markaida. I hope that's
yes, Dr. Ambardi. Thank you very much for your answer to my question.
Yeah.
So for
okay. Yeah, it's okay. We we still have one question from Pak Wija actually.
Okay. Actually, it's just a little bit. So Pak Dodi, I think it's early this year. Yeah, we had in LP3GS webinar seminar, and we invited John Umbret, Ismail Fahmi, our colleague, and also we released our survey as well. I think early this year, not January, really. The result was more or less the same, but the question was, who are the most popular figures in the internet and in the survey? And the result was you know more or less the same, like Prabowo, Anies, Ganjar, yeah, and the big five is just the same. So it's there's a slight dynamic between them, you know. But the big five, we can see that more or less the result of the survey as well as the popularity in the internet is more or less the same. But your survey for me today that you explained, you presented was surprising, yeah, because there is a sharp contrast between the result of the sentiment in the internet and in the survey. So my question would be, what explains this? Why there's a sharp contrast? Is it merely because people tend to be angry in the internet, or what is it, do you think?
Yeah. There are several possible explanation for that, but one possible explanation is that internet, especially social media, they are full of bots. They are also full of influencers that they try to ask their friends to give answers. So to give their votes for particular candidates. So it does not reflect the reality. That's for one thing. So if you talk with Fahmi, for example, I guess he has the capability of putting away all those bots and then only authentic users that is counted. Maybe it give a comparable result with the survey. That's one possibility. And then second one, actually, social media is middle class bias, has urban bias too. So it does not represent the whole populations. In that case, I would rely on conventional survey instead of social media survey. Even though for political strategy, of course, social media is useful for mobilizing support, but it is not necessarily useful for predicting the real distribution of support, political support among the candidates. I would rely on regular survey. Now I can declare that I'm no longer in survey institution, so I do not have interest in that now anymore. But my experience in the survey world tells me that we have different survey, like a regular survey. We get a sample, representative sample for the whole populations, and then second one we have middle class survey, telephone survey, which is biased middle class. And then usually the result of these two surveys are different, even though sometimes they are similar. But if we want to predict the distribution of political support among the candidates, the conventional survey is more reliable than telephone survey. And then there is elite survey. It is different completely. So in 2014, I guess, no, it was 2013. We interviewed hundreds of political elites, the entrepreneurs, and then the chief editors of news media, and then academicians, etc. So we define the population of the elite, and then we sample them, and then we interview who is their favorite presidential candidate at that time. The result is quite different from public opinion survey.
What's the result?
Elite, they have more information on the candidates. They have inside information. Some of them know personally the candidates, and they know their capabilities. So they give more evidence why they choose someone. So if we have we measure capability and then acceptability, etc., and then it is different from the candidate choice of ordinary voters.
It was in 2014, yeah?
2013, we made that.
13. So what's the choice of the elites then, back then?
At that time was Mahfud MD. And then actually we made a release at that time. We opened discussions. These are the candidates favored by these elites. And then we also published the names of the elites who let us to publish their names. So we did not at that time hide our source persons. And then Mahfud MD was the first one, and then the second one I guess Sri Mulyani at that time.
Yeah, that's
Oh.
very interesting.
Interesting at that time. So it's
Yeah.
it is different from the candidate choice of ordinary voters.
Yeah. I just want to make clarification, about one thing. Your method in the social media analysis, I mean the result of the survey that with high sentiments, did you do survey in the internet or you did social media analysis, big data analysis or data mining in your method?
For the
Social media?
actually news media.
Oh, okay. So not the internet, not the conversation on Twitter, not like
3,000. We work with Indonesian indicator.
Oh.
Not Burhan's indicator, but Indonesian indicator, the digital company.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the survey, of course, our own survey at that time, LSI survey.
Okay.
So we contrast those two. It's quite different.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mas Dodi.
Okay, thank you, Pak Dodi. I think it is an interesting topic to, if we have more time, we can elaborate more because for me particularly, it is very intriguing discussion because actually government is not really powerful before the giant media technology company. But later on we realized government try to also to behave like them for monopolizing the information and also repress the information from the civil society. So I think this discussion is very interesting, and later on maybe for the next summer course we can invite you again to discuss further, or maybe in different kind of event that our fellows as a participant here can invite you as a source person.
Yeah. We want to know the result. Yeah, I think okay, Pak Gulam, you can I guess.
Yeah. We thank for your opportunity to join with us here and to share your perspective and ideas, and maybe one or any participant that may contact you for different kind of collaboration or something, as wished by Pak Wija at the beginning of the session, that perhaps we can generate the more alliance of the civil society to deal with the communication problem, digital Leviathan problem, and etc. Thank you, Pak Dodi, for the opportunity, and thank you also to the participant who stay until late, just like yesterday, and hopefully all of you are well, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Thank you all, and bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Dodi.
you,
Thank you, Pak
Mas
Gulam.
Dodi.
I think applause for Pak Dodi from your own place, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
See you then. So I will leave, okay?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank
Pak
you.
Dodi. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mas Dodi.
Yeah.
Tomorrow we'll have a session, right, Pak Gulam?
Yes.
What is it about?
Tomorrow we will have law and digital rights with Herlambang P. Wiratraman from Erlangga University.
Okay, that will be fascinating. Okay, everyone, see you again tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you and bye.
Bye.
See you. Bye.
Thank you.